Hello, YouTube divers. This is WaterDive122, and I want to welcome you all to another episode of Bands of the Alphabet. This time, we are going to be taking a look at my favorite band that starts with the letter M. And if you've been following my channel since the very beginning, you automatically know who my favorite band is that starts with the letter M, and that is the band Metallica. Now, it was actually really hard for me to choose between Metallica and Megadeth because both of those bands are among my top 10 favorite bands of all time. Um, but I went with Metallica simply because, they were a few spots ahead of Megadeth. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch episode 7 of Magic Metal Mondays. I talk a little bit more about it there. That was the episode that I talked about my top 10 favorite bands of all time. You could go check that out if you want to. And I talk a little bit more about it there. But, so yeah, Metallica, they're freaking 10 out of 10 band. Everyone knows them. Almost everyone loves them, especially in the metal community. And if you don't like Metallica, then it's probably because, you weren't a big fan of their Load and Reload era, and especially the Saint Anger era. But I mean, I've already talked about Saint Anger. I don't need to talk about it again. Um, but yeah, obviously my favorite Metallica album is the 1986 album Master of Puppets. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. I talked about that on episode 5 of Magic Metal Mondays. You could go check that out if you want to. And also my favorite Metallica song, which is the title track of Master of Puppets, is my favorite Metallica song. It was actually hard for me to choose either the title track or the song One off of the album And Justice for All. But I decided to go with the title track of Master of Puppets, mainly because of the amazing riffs, the amazing vocals, the amazing drumming, the amazing bass, basically everything. The clean production, which really packs a punch. And the musicianship on here is absolutely great. The lineup on this album is, of course, James Hetfield on vocals and rhythm guitar. And, well, he does play some lead on this album. Kirk Hammett on lead guitar, for the most part. The late Cliff Burton on the bass. Literally, this album was released just a couple months before he was killed in that bus accident in Sweden while the band was touring this album. And Lars Ulrich on the drums, who, in my opinion, is a pretty good drummer, but he might be a little bit overrated. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Overrated. I don't know. But overall, like I've always said, Master of Puppets is an absolute masterpiece. And Metallica, such a great band. And if I said it once, I'll say it again. Metallica is the band that got me into metal. So that's why they're not only my favorite band that starts with the letter M, they're also my favorite metal band. So there you go. Now with that said, let's get into the honorable mentions. Clearly, Megadeth is the runner-up. Absolutely love Megadeth. Of course, Dave Mustaine and company. Yeah, I do think Metallica is better than Megadeth, but Megadeth is still freaking 10 out of 10 band. I mean, the Rust in Peace album, basically every album that they did between Peace Sells, But Who's Buying, and Euthanasia is what I consider to be some of the best metal albums created. Obviously with Rust in Peace and Countdown to Extinction. And with Rust in Peace being another one of my top 10 albums of all time. Again, you can check out episode 5 for more information on that. Or you could check out my Megadeth album rankings, and I talk a little bit more about it there. So yeah, Megadeth, easy runner-up. But when it came to the other two honorable mentions that I've encountered here, the second honorable mention wasn't as tough as the third honorable mention, and I will explain in a little bit why. But my second honorable mention goes to Mastodon. And I haven't really mentioned Mastodon a little bit, except when I mentioned one of their songs on part 1 of my top 100 all-time favorite hard rock and heavy metal series, when I talked about their song "Asleep in the Deep." Killer song. The music video is just freaking wild as well. um, but Mastodon is kind of a very weird in a good way band. I mean, they're from Atlanta, and when they first started off, they were kind of like a sludgy death metal band. I mean, they weren't really a death metal band like Cannibal Corpse or Obituary or Bolt Thrower, bands like that. They were just kind of doing their own version of sludge metal, I guess. Especially on their first couple of albums, like their debut album Remission, Leviathan, which is considered to be one of the greatest metal concept albums of all time. My personal favorite song off that album is, of course, Blood and Thunder. And I think it's my favorite Mastodon album. I need to go back and listen to their discography. But then when you get to albums... Actually, no, I take that back. Blood Mountain is my favorite Mastodon album. That's right. But Leviathan is probably a close second. I don't know. Yeah, Blood Mountain from 2006 is by far my favorite Mastodon album. Really good album. And then when they get to albums like Crack in the Sky, something like that, they get a little bit more proggy, and they do like heavy progressive metal. And I do like some progressive stuff. As you can see, I'm wearing a Yes shirt today. Really, I like prog. I love prog. So, and that's basically why I like Asleep in the Deep. The hook on that song is absolutely amazing. And I do think their Once More Around the Sun album is kind of underrated. But I might make a Mastodon album rankings on Magic Metal Monday soon. Who knows? And then lastly, my third honorable mention, I was actually caught up between 3 bands: Motley Crue, Motorhead, and Maroon 5. And now, like I've always said, Maroon 5 has probably been the most controversial band I've covered on this channel, because, you know, they're a pop band, and like I said on my Maroon 5 ranking, I tend to avoid pop bands. So I was kind of debating whether to have them as my third honorable mention. And of course, Motorhead was probably the least likely to make the honorable mentions, because I have not listened to Motorhead's discography, although their Ace of Spades album from 1980 is probably my favorite that I've heard. And so I decided to go with Motley Crue. Now, I won't lie, I'm not the biggest Motley Crue fan in the freaking world, but they do have some really good stuff. My favorite album from them is, of course, Shout with the Devil. Although Dr. Feelgood, in my opinion, is also a really good album. Dr. Feelgood. And I'm actually going to see Motley Crue next year in Charlotte, along with the Def Leppard, Joan Jett, and Poison. That will be... I can already tell that'll be a fun show. But overall, Motley Crue, it's a pretty good band. Shout with the Devil. Shout at the Devil. And Dr. Feelgood are probably my 2 favorite albums from them. Really good stuff. Even though I'm not really crazy as I am. I mean, they're not my favorite glam metal band. That award would go to Cinderella, so you could check that video out. So, with that said, Metallica takes my favorite band that starts with the letter M. Tomorrow we'll be going over my favorite band that starts with the letter N. So, make sure to stay in tune for that. So with that said, that concludes this edition of Bands of the Alphabet. Thank you so much for watching, my fellow YouTube divers. This is WaterDive122 signing out, ready to dive into more fun on YouTube. Thanks for watching.